Hey everyone, this is S.M. Pratt, and today we're going to talk about some of the new businesses entering the market, specifically a new grading company and a couple of businesses that want to create a new marketplace option for collectibles. Now, before we get into it, I talk about the private deals that they've offered me. Some have offered me advertisement options, consultation. If you're interested in that sort of thing, I go into detail in the last Patreon monthly market recap video. Otherwise, in this video, I'm going to talk about, in my opinion, why I don't think there's much of a need for a new marketplace and or new grading company. Now, bear with me. I'm sure the latter, people are like, wait, we're always talking about the issues with grading, which is true, but the perspective and what this grading company is bringing to the table, I just don't think is going to fit the hobby, which we'll get into. So to start with a good baseline, a good point to open with is that the hobby has experienced growth and establishment in the past 5 years, more so than the previous 10. So back in the day, it was real easy to come to this hobby with some pocket change and buy some pocket monsters and rinse and repeat, where today there is a higher barrier to entry. There's a higher cost to get into the hobby. So therefore, if you're trying to come in and create a new marketplace, create a new platform, that's a very advantageous goal. It's very difficult to do. Or back in like 2014, it's easy to buy stuff from restricted markets in Japan, flip them overseas for market value on eBay, rinse and repeat. That was a very easy thing to do. Where today that's becoming more and more difficult because you have more competition and more capital. So with that, we're at the point now where you have actual billion-dollar companies coming into the game, and they're trying to inject that capital because they realize that things like Pokemon, Magic, your modern collectibles are the future collectible. One of these is actually a coin grading company who's trying to get into trading cards, and they are trying to, get their feet wet into this because coins are literally an antiquated currency. Surprisingly, the modern coin market is not something most people are talking about. So therefore, you have a lot of interest, a lot of people trying to segue into trading cards because for someone with that level of capital, Pokemon and Magic are still very low as far as market cap is concerned. I always say that. You have things like artwork at the top, then you have vintage sports, or even somewhere in there, probably like antiquities, numismatics, coins, things like that. Then you have something like Magic, and then Pokemon is at the bottom of that hierarchy. So we are still in the Poliwag phase, the Magikarp's floundering around and splashing. Therefore, these businesses see that opportunity. So we'll start with the juicy one everybody wants to talk about, the grading company. The TLDR is I don't really see a need for a new grading company, especially a company that grades coins, which is this instance. So they approached me through Instagram, probably some low-wage employee who was just absolutely obliterating my inbox. I made the mistake of accepting the requests out of the 10 that I had that day. And I mean, just one thing after another, and just was asking all these questions, my opinion, what should they do? What should they do with their holder? Ultimately, I don't think this is going to work for one big reason. People don't want their cards graded like coins. I like the nice PSA 1 to 10 scale. More specifically, Charizard is a PSA 10 Charizard, a PSA 9 Charizard, not a 9.8 or 9.2 or 8.769314 repeating. That's not what people want. It's nice and clean. Even if you want to argue there's some ambiguous grades between 8 and 9, or that some are just outright misgraded, that's okay. I'd rather take this nice, easy to understand scale that already has 20 years of inertia and has established itself. And moreover, even if you don't like that, the inertia and time it would take to establish this new scale would take years. It would take so long. So therefore, I don't see it as an immediate need. I think most collectors are ultimately satisfied with the PSA 1 to 10 scale. So therefore, that's the biggest reason why I don't think it's going to work. Now, with that said, markets are so large and robust that there's probably some market share they could take in trying to expand. But at the end of the day, again, it's PSA blank card. It's PSA 8 University Magic card. PSA 10 Charizard, pick your poison. That is the synonymous understanding for what we expect in Pokemon. It's the staple. Also, in relation to this company, I mean this in the nicest way possible, but okay, boomer. I mean, the amount of just absolute corporate confidence that I receive from these messages, they're so out of touch with how this works today. The process of legitimizing themselves, because that's what these places are looking for. They're reaching out to me in my super awesome grandma basement bunker because they want legitimization. If they want noise and hype, they can go to other people, but they're coming to me because they want to legitimize their platform. And in order to do so, that's the most valuable component here. These places are too cheap. So tying in this idea of, the complaints about PSA and, the current grading model we have, that's PSA's biggest problem. They're too cheap. They don't want to take the risk. They don't want to pay someone $100,000 a year for consultation that would pay dividends. They don't want to do that. So they want the cheap option, and that's what they get. And that's why people are frustrated. But again, not frustrated enough to leave the standard, to abandon the standard that we know. It's that situation when you're in a job that you don't entirely like, a boss that you don't entirely appreciate, and it's better to have that evil that you know and understand than to go and roll the dice again and risk something else. That's essentially where we are with aspects of grading today, is that we don't have something that is completely failing. We have issues that we would like to correct that are easily rectified. But until, these companies that can't stop talking about how they're, decamillion, 100 million, or billion-dollar companies, they can't stop talking about that, but simultaneously they're unwilling to pay above minimum wage for the new graders. That's why we are here where we are, is because they just are unwilling to pay that premium. Kind of tying into, collecting, when I always say that you can't expect to consistently buy things under market value. That's not a business model, especially significant items. You can't consistently buy significant items under market value. That's just inherently not going to happen. It's a definition of insanity. Continuing to do the same thing, expecting a different result. That's basically what these companies are doing. They're a little bit out of touch with the pulse of the hobby. I know they've reached out to other entities who have all declined because they're just simply not offering compensation for that time, that work that you'd have to invest, to really get this cowboy investment off the ground of a new grading company. So that's the first one. The other one is the marketplace. I'm sure other people know the company that reached out to a couple other collectors, high profile individuals. Again, I talk about it in Patreon. I name the company. I talk about how much they offered and, some of the details if you're interested. But the marketplace aspect, I think, has more opportunity than the grading company. I actually think there's more opportunity with the marketplace for one big reason, and that is social media. Social media takes a market share, and social media is not organized whatsoever. There's a big opportunity there. If you can corral the market share from social media, I think that's the biggest just target or demographic that you can really take over with a more well-oiled marketplace. A good example would be something like TCG Player. That's a great example. That's one where if you're looking for that ungraded card anywhere from $1 to $100, that's probably the place to go, especially modern, more playable things. That's the arena for that. And they hold a market share because they provide a very consistent, concise platform that really thrives and works well. Now, there are places that can come in and take that I think have more capital, more vision, and they already have other platforms that's easy to cross over and bring that in. But again, they need awareness and legitimization. And if they're not willing to pay, it's going to be more of the same. It's going to be a handful of total net sales versus, people like me who are just, again, in the grandma basement bunker who are getting that type. If I'm getting that in a week for the total sales of a $1 billion company platform, you got a problem. So that's the problem they face, is that they're trying to establish themselves. But again, they aren't willing to fully commit. And I get it. Everybody wants to hedge and negotiate and they don't want to spend too much and overspend. But in a situation of legitimizing, that's what you have to do. And, tying this into collecting, and myself or anybody else who's done anything at all significant in their life, you have to take risks. There's no way you're going to reap some reward without some type of risk. It's impossible. More specifically, these people trying to take market share and expand the marketplace. The problem is that other large auction houses already provide that. They already provide that need. Again, there's no one need here. It's not like we don't have eBay, we don't have platforms. We have plenty of platforms. And more specifically, the people that they need to legitimize these platforms, they already hold the positions. People like myself, I have a heavy trophy card position, or I have a heavy Japanese promo or first edition base position, some sealed product, except basically something and everything. But at the end of the day, this is a position that's really hard to replicate. It's 15 years of doing this very aggressively in a way that most people didn't, taking massive risks year over year over year over year. So therefore, 15 years later, there's a much higher margin in return and gain because I consistently took that risk and I didn't make excuses for why I was risking, the highest capital at the time for some cards. You just took that risk. And sure, it might not always pay off. There are some cards that didn't really move. This didn't move as well as my Pikachu illustrators or, pick your poison, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, that's the name of the game, is risk reward. So that is the issue that they're facing, is that even the companies, I think one of the most successful ones, I worked with an auction house, they were the most pleasant and the closest that I came to inking a deal. And they're the most qualified, again, to transition and take some of this market share because they have the largest buyer pool, bar none. But the problem is, at the end of the day, is that the entities that exist now in Pokemon are already established enough that they just don't need to migrate to something else. I have no need to migrate and work with some other company unless they're incentivizing me and giving me an offer I can't refuse. So that's where it stands. Again, talked about this in Patreon. I hinted at my time value and what it would take for me to stop my projects or investments that generate income for me to transition. And this is just me, and it's not unique to me. It's the position everybody's going to inherently be in. If you're a business that they're approaching, you're going to be in that position where it's like, okay, this is the revenue I make. This is my hourly time value. So, if you want this much time from me, it's got to be this, at least this cost. So that's the issue they're facing, is that they're facing people who hold these positions that don't need to sell. And more importantly, you can't replicate those positions. Even if you have $1 billion, you can't replicate, some of these trophy positions or Gary's Charizard position. It's literally impossible. Even if you have like Grand Theft Auto money, it's just impossible, to instantly replicate those positions. So that is the situation right now for these new businesses. I would say the largest takeaway from this is that Pokemon is the hobby of the future. Coins and things like that are the hobby of the past. Coins are literally antiquated currency. Like, seriously, who has coins anymore? You don't hear me any coins jangling when I start this video, when I walk up to the camera, because we just don't. That's not even bills at this point. I can't remember the last time I paid anything in cash, because it's just antiquated. It's an antiquated currency. There's no modern interest in it. Or if there is, it's extremely negligible. All the interests for things like that are dinosaurs. It's the old era. At least with sports, you have a vintage category, and then you have the modern category, which still has interest, or with coins, it's pretty much extinct. So Pokemon is the hobby of the future. Knock on wood, who knows its future, how much it'll thrive, what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, coins are very irrelevant. I mean, we're at a point now where we don't even use physical coins. It's all about digital currency. That's the hot new thing for all the Zoomers. So that's the current standard. I don't see that changing in the near future. That's why these industries are looking to get into Pokemon. They're looking to get into modern collectibles. And at the end of the day, the final point is they need to hire hobbyists. A lot of these places are trying to hire someone with like an MBA or whatever it is. You need someone who has critical hobby experience, someone who has done this for 5 to 10 years consistently. They're going to take that ship where it needs to go. They're the only type of person who can take it to the promised land. And going back to PSA's problem is that they're just simply unwilling to pay. They just don't want to pay for quality. So, they want to buy energy cards all day, and they're going to get energy card returns. They have always had the opportunity to buy someone else, but they just simply don't. They choose not to. So that is the takeaway. Huge growth right now, huge establishment. I'm getting ad offers probably every week, bi-weekly, whether it's in the form of thousands of dollars per couple of videos, or people who want me to do a sponsor for some product. I'm getting that. And again, I'm just grandma basement bunker dude sitting in a chair talking to you for 10, 15 minutes unedited. That's what I'm getting on my end. I'm sure the larger channels are getting similar offers or comparable offers as well. But ultimately, it's a good sign of growth. People are just trying to get into the game, just trying to make you aware of the current climate. Again, not trying to pump Patreon, but I really hammer home every detail in the video. So there it is, guys. That's what I have. Outside interest in a way we've never experienced before, with money we've never experienced before, but it's par for the course. This is what happens when you grow. This is what happens when you expand. This is what happens when you become a little more legitimate. People want to get in on it because they understand it's a new currency, it's a new investment vehicle, it's a new interest, it's a new platform. So that's why you have this interest. There it is. You know the deal. Let me know how you feel, and that's pretty much everything. Till next time, guys.